Hello, America. Welcome to Common Sense. I'm Wendy Bell. Okay, I got to ask you, what in the world is going on with House Speaker Mike Johnson? Because I totally cannot wrap my head around this guy. I mean, he looks the part, hard to ruffle, competent, stoic. He talks and acts the part, too. Deeply religious, father of four, hard right, legal warrior, a constitutional conservative, played a key role in Trump's, baseless impeachments, his team's defense of that. But Mike Johnson votes for things I simply don't get. Like he was a recent yes on sending $300 million more U.S. taxpayer dollars to Ukraine while doing nothing to secure our country's property lines. Like, does anybody out there even know what's really going on in Ukraine? What are we even paying for? Where are the receipts? Johnson's also voted with Joe Biden multiple times. He helped pass that $1.5 trillion omnibus monstrosity. He funded Biden's tragic vaccine mandates, and he voted to pass Biden's $800 billion defense budget, of course, without defunding the jab mandate for the military, right? And before he was Speaker, Mike Johnson also voted against ending federal control of our local schools because government meddling in education usually turns out so well, right? And he voted for women to be eligible for the draft. Like, all of this is totally confusing to me. But it was one Mike Johnson vote, that House tiebreaker, that I really don't get. And I want to see if our panel can provide the assist for me today. So let's bring him in. Dan O'Donnell hosts the Dan O'Donnell Show on News Talk 1130 WISN out of Milwaukee. Mary Walter hosts the Mary Walter Radio Podcast, which airs Tuesdays on YouTube. Hey, Mare. And Chris Arps co-hosts the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on News Talk 101.9 and 94.1 FM in St. Louis. You guys, that House vote, I know you understand what I'm talking about. It allows the FBI to continue spying on any of us that it wants without first going to the judge and explaining, why. I mean, this is exactly what Hillary and Obama did to Donald Trump. What is going on with Mike Johnson here? And why does it seem like his closest ally is Donald Trump? Read the tea leaves.
Well, this was a puzzling vote, to say the least. I mean, those who wanted this reauthorized will say, well, we can use this to surveil terror suspects. I mean, this is sort of a remnant of the war on terror, which is, of course, still going on. We are still fighting Islamic Jihad. To see something of a resurgence following the October 7th terror attack in Israel. But we all know, Wendy, what this law has been used for. It's been used for essentially political espionage and not actually fighting America's enemies. America's enemies, at least according to the organized left, are conservatives. It absolutely blew my mind that Johnson could perhaps be so naive as to think that this is an innocent terror fighting tool, when really it's only going to be used as part of the further weaponization of government against people like him.
Right. It's true. It's true. And I want to quote him because this is interesting. Thomas Massey. He said, "This is a sad day for America." He tweeted this after Johnson opposed this amendment to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, of which we speak, that failed on the House floor in that tie vote. He said the Speaker does not always vote in the House, but he was the tiebreaker today. He voted against warrants. Mary, Mike Johnson thinks it's okay for the feds to spy on whomever, whenever, why ever. What do you think is going on here?
You know, I wish I knew what was going on here, but I think both parties are falling apart right now. And maybe, and I don't know whether we're going to see the formation of a third party to come out of all of this down the road. Ooh. But, the Democrats have their far left, crazy, progressive socialist, base that are rioting right now in favor of a terrorist group. And the right has their problem with the Never Trumper section, right? And so they don't want Trump. And Mike Johnson said, well, we have a very small majority. So sometimes,
right.
I have to work with Democrats. And I'm fine with that. I wish we could reach across the aisle. But the problem is Democrats never reach across the aisle. So it's always Republicans who are reaching across the aisle. And Democrats always know that Republicans will always give. Republicans will always say, cave. You can always get, a Mitch McConnell, you can always get a Mitt Romney or a Mike Johnson to do that. So the question now is, and by the way, Jake LaTurner from Kansas just announced that he's no longer going to run. He's stepping away. So we could very well have Hakeem Jeffries as the leader of the House, Speaker of the House. come
That's
November. And this,
yeah.
well, I'm
Go
just
ahead.
going to say, this guy just decided this now.
Right.
Like,
No, come
so
on. No, you're right about that. I mean, I'm suspicious about everything. Chris, I mean, jump in here. That tiebreaker vote, it happened just hours before Johnson flew to Mar-a-Lago, right? The personal invitation of President Trump, who says he thinks Johnson's doing a very good job. So Trump has his back here. And I feel like something is up, right? What do you think, Chris?
What I think, Wendy, is these votes that you mentioned. I think Speaker Johnson sees these as legacy votes when it comes to the FISA 702 bill. I think he doesn't want to go down as the speaker that let that mechanism lapse. And God forbid we had a terrible terrorist attack under his watch, and he's responsible for not getting that bill passed. I think it's the same thing with Ukraine. I think he doesn't want to be known as the speaker that lost Ukraine and didn't get funding for Ukraine. Right or wrong, I think that's a reason for a lot of these votes. These are legacy votes, and you see that with people that are Speaker of the House or majority leader. They see these votes as legacy votes and how they are going to be looked upon in history.
You know, I've never thought about that. That's a really great point. And of course, Trump and Johnson appeared together to announce the SAVE Act. Did you guys hear about this legislation meant to end a totally idiotic policy that prevents DMV officials from asking for proof of citizenship before they can give somebody an ID that they can use to vote? It's ridiculous. Listen.
And you see, states are currently prohibited, believe it or not, the states are prohibited from asking someone to prove that they're a citizen. The federal voter registration form just has a check-a-box, and if you do that, you're good. The states can't allow it. Well, we think that's a serious problem.
Yeah. You know, remember, Dan, our elections are the safest and most secure ever.
Well, yeah, I mean, Wendy, who would possibly ever lie on a government form, especially when the fate of the country is at stake? Now, there was just an NGO, a non-governmental organization, putting out a statement in Mexico in Spanish telling people, hey, if you're going into the United States and you're claiming asylum, be sure to vote for President Biden. Otherwise, if Trump wins, you might be forced to leave the country. Now we've got this, what would seem to be common sense. Hey, you've got to prove you're a United States citizen before you can get the thing that we use to prove eligibility to vote. All this happening in an election year just seems a little bit too coincidental. But if you think about it, Wendy, it makes perfect sense. Look, they will do anything to defeat Trump. They think Trump is an existential threat to a world order that they control. Given that, wouldn't it just make sense to import a whole bunch of people and get them voting as soon as humanly possible? To me, it makes all the sense in the world.
I don't know. You sound a little bit like a conspiracy theorist in my book, but we'll check back on that. All right, guys, hang tight.